Hi, this is Kevin Hayes, jazz pianist, and you are watching Time to Connect.
Hey, Kevin Hayes, thanks so much for taking the time to connect, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for doing this. Been looking forward to talking to you. Are you in New York?
I'm in upstate New York. I'm about, well, on a good day, about 2.5 hours drive to New York City.
Okay, you
Uh,
must
I,
have some cold weather in December then, huh?
it's getting there. It's been not too bad. I was away for um, gosh, almost a month. So things, the leaves fell off the trees, and it's definitely colder than when I was here in October.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I definitely want to talk about your latest record and other recordings of yours,
Mm.
your live stuff, your singer-songwriter work, a lot. But let's start with, if you don't mind, a little personal history. Um, as I understand it, you were born in New York, but you grew up in Connecticut. Is that right?
It's true. I was born in New York City. At that time, my parents were actually not living in New York City, but in Scarsdale, New York, and then they moved shortly after I was born to Connecticut, to Greenwich, Connecticut, where I grew up.
Hmm. And what were you like as a kid?
I was a drag. No,
Really?
what was I like as a kid? Um, Gosh, good question. It's hard to say that without the bird's eye or perhaps parental view. But I was certainly very interested in music from an early age. I had a good ear. It was sort of discovered and pretty good hands. So I did take piano lessons pretty young. Um, and Yeah, I just kind of took to it and had sort of traditional classical piano lessons as a child and
Hmm.
just learning to read the big notes and these kinds of things.
How old were you when you first started playing piano?
I think I was maybe 6 years old or something like that.
Huh? Yeah.
Um, I mean, we had the piano in the house, so I mean, it was as long as I could remember. In terms of, taking lessons, I think it might have been, something like that age, maybe a little bit older.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
And did you ever consider any other instruments? Did you play any other instruments? Or was it always going to be piano for you?
I had a drum set later on, and I did like playing the drums, but piano made the most sense, and in terms of what I was sort of seemed to be gravitating towards and what I was good at.
So what kind of, let's see, you were, if I'm not mistaken, are you in your early 50s? Is that right?
I'm 54.
Uh-huh. So what were you were a little too young to have you kind of missed the Beatles in the late 60s, which is what I kind of cut my teeth on. What you were a kid in the 70s then. What were you listening to?
I was listening to, I was listening to rock
Hmm.
of my time and singer songwriters. I mean, I grew up, hearing James Taylor and Carole King
Hmm.
and some of that was being played around the house. But my parents were also into jazz a bit, so they had like George Shearing records and Jimmy Smith record and some Oscar Peterson. So I was
Right.
exposed to jazz pretty early.
Hmm.
Um, but once I got into like junior high school, I was listening to like prog rock. I was listening to Rush. I was kind of a big, really into Rush.
Hmm.
But then I was really also getting into Herbie Hancock and Bill Evans and Wynton Kelly.
Yeah.
And I was starting to study that music. I had my first jazz teacher was a guy by the name of Lou Stein, who lived in the area, sort of Westchester area of New York. And actually, he was playing at a local restaurant in town, and my father was the first one to start taking lessons with him, and my father played piano
Wow.
as well, not professionally, but
Gotcha.
I would sort of start taking with Lou myself. So he was my first jazz teacher. I was
Mhm.
maybe, I don't know, 13 or something like that.
At that point, did you pretty much go kind of exclusively jazz, or were you still listening to a lot of big range of music?
I was always listening to a pretty big range of music. I mean, I think once jazz kind of took hold, it was pretty serious.
Yeah,
um, but I mean, I love Stevie Wonder and
sure.
different bands. I'm even sort of like some of the other singers from I mean, I remember getting like the latest Al Jarreau record,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
um, Lionel Richie. I mean, I
sure.
was in to
Yeah, yeah, right
all
on.
kinds of different music.
It must be. I want to ask you about James Taylor. You mentioned James growing up listening to him. I can remember Kevin, my mom driving me to a kind of a little drugstore that had albums to
Hmm.
pick up. The Oh, Fire and Rain. Is it called Sweet Baby James? I think that
Hmm.
album. I can
Hmm.
remember that just like I mean that was 50 years ago, and
Yeah.
I can remember it like it was yesterday. James was huge for me, but it must be interesting for you having grown up listening to him and then end up playing with him.
Yeah, that was really an incredible treat. It's been an incredible treat. It wasn't that long ago. We still do gigs here and there. Yeah, I mean, that sound, that
Yeah.
unique voice, and his guitar playing all those great songs. It's just, yeah, it's really very, very cool.
So do you and Golding sort of trade off playing piano for James?
We have done that. This whole thing started actually because um, Larry had been playing with Steve Gadd and was off doing some other things and recommended me for Steve's band, and then Jimmy Johnson, who's the bass player for both Steve and James, who's basically the musical director, asked me if I might like to do some gigs with James, and I said, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of your of the people you were listening to growing up. Who are some of your musical heroes? I'm interested, particularly in piano players. I'm sort of
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with Monk myself. I'm wondering if Monk had much of an influence on you. Paul Bley. You mentioned Bill Evans and Herbie,
Mm-hmm.
McCoy, Keith Jarrett. Who are the guys that
I
really
mean, I was
inspired you?
listening to. I mean, I heard all of the above. I
Hmm.
mean, whether it was directly from their albums or people they were playing with. If it was McCoy, I was hearing him probably first through Train or through Wayne,
Hmm.
Wayne's early records.
Yeah.
You know, Monk certainly. I listened quite a bit to him. I don't. It's interesting. It's hard to say. What percentage of these guys, or what percentage of me is their influence.
Right.
But it's all in there. In
Yeah.
fact, just recently I took kind of a deep dive into Monk's music. That I really hadn't done prior. We had a birthday celebration, a Monk birthday celebration up in New York at Smoke Jazz Club,
Nice.
and so it was a really great band with Joe Lovano and Al Foster and Ben Street,
Yeah.
and so we
That's
were,
pretty
yeah,
strong.
yeah, pretty strong. So we played 4 nights just of total Monk, and
Wow, man.
just to go in there and have, I don't know, we had a list of like 25 tunes or something that we had said, okay, this is cool, this is cool.
Hmm.
Not sure about this one. Let's try it anyway.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some of that stuff is, I mean, it's all challenging and kind of hard,
Sure.
but
Sure. Yeah.
to go in, after hearing his music and not, I mean, over the years I mean, I've played quite a bit, but it was a great opportunity to go deep. But you know, so certainly Monk, as I said, Wynton Kelly, Herbie Hancock,
Mhm.
these are the guys that you know, basically, most of the piano players who played with Miles, Miles always had the best piano players.
Yeah. Yeah.
He made sure of that, and so that was the crew, I guess, that I was really calling from, uh,
Yeah.
learning from, listening to those records.
I saw somewhere, I don't know where it was. I saw somewhere you associated with Paul Bley, and that somehow maybe you were influenced pretty heavily by Bley. Do you feel
You
that?
know, I really, I, I, I didn't really listen to him. You know, I didn't.
Hmm.
I don't even to this day. I mean, you know, I don't think I have a single vinyl of Paul. You know, but I've heard him
Yeah,
and love his playing. But it isn't someone that I listen to a whole ton.
yeah.
But you know, I love his approach, and you
Uh-huh.
know you know, and certainly he was, as we know, kind of a big influence on Keith. So I may have gotten more Paul from Keith than
Yeah,
directly from Paul. but
yeah.
yeah, it just wasn't somebody that I really explored that much.
Hmm.
You know, yeah.
How about contemporary players? One of the things that is encouraging to me, I think jazz is alive and well. Man, there's so many great young players now. Who are some of the other, not necessarily young, but other contemporary
Mm.
piano players who you admire and listen to?
You know, it's interesting. I was listening to just came across a little video or a couple of videos uh, of Sam Yahel. I don't know if you're that familiar with Sam, but
No.
he's an amazing cat. You know, he's actually a very good Hammond B3 player.
Okay.
You know, but he's also a great piano player. And I was just checking him out, really good.
Okay.
And I mean, he's, you know, just a bit younger than me, but
Hmm.
you know, we hung out a bit in New York, and so in terms of sort of my generation, sort of some of my favorite guys is, you know, I mean, Brad certainly is,
Hmm.
of course, wonderful, and um, and Larry, and you know, we all
Right.
kind of came up together, and um, I'm going to be missing a whole bunch of names, so that's put me on the
Well,
spot.
Gerald
But
Clayton is
well,
is
yeah, Gerald, yeah. So of the younger generation, I think, yeah, Gerald and Shy Maestro, wonderful players, you know, um, and you know, of course, I mean, Jason Moran's
yeah, oh yeah,
doing
yeah,
great stuff, and
yeah, man.
you know, have that unique voice, and
He's ridiculous. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Brad, and I meant to listen to it before we talked and I didn't, but didn't you do a duo with him or some kind of project with him? And how
yeah.
did
We
that?
recorded a two piano project about 10 years ago. And it was a kind of collaboration between a guy that we went to, that Brad actually went to school with, and I met him a bit later, a composer, Patrick Zimmerly. Um, but so Patrick uh, made some arrangements of kind of 20th century classical composers, and also composed some music himself for the project. And then Brad and I both had some of our originals, and yeah, so we recorded that back in, it was like 2011, I think it was, and did some touring on that project, and yeah, it was a real treat. I mean, he's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing. Well, let's
Hmm.
talk a little bit about your new record. I've been listening to it and it's just a captivating, it's a beautiful record, man.
Thank you.
You and Bill Stewart, American Ballad. It's available now streaming, and I'm kind of big on vinyl, and I notice it's not quite available, but it's available soon on vinyl. Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually in pre-orders, so get it soon.
Hmm.
Because we're probably going to close the window on that to
Okay.
put them into production. But yeah, so this record actually was kind of laying a bit dormant. We had recorded it in New York. We just went in the studio. I said, "Man, let's just improvise," you know. And
It has a live feel.
it has a what?
A live feel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We just kind of went for it, and ideas that would occur to us, we would play,
Mhm.
and I think it came out really nicely. And so we put it out recently, and we've done a couple of gigs, even sort of trying out the electrified version. I'm actually thinking about us going into the studio and doing something like that, because we did a gig, excuse me, recently in New York, at a place called New Blue in the East Village, and had a Fender Rhodes there, and so we kind of went forward in that context. You know, it was really fun.
Cool.
But you know, Bill and I go way back, from our early days in New York. We were actually roommates for a little while, and just did a lot of playing. He was in my trio, I was in his trio. We played a bunch with Chris Potter, with John Scofield. Yeah, different configurations, you know.
And yet another sort of connection to Golding's. You know, he's played a lot with Bill
That's right.
and Scofield, and
Yeah. And
yeah,
Bill's trio was me and Larry, so we had two keyboards and
yeah,
and drums, you
yeah.
know.
Well, that's
So
cool. Well, you have something like, God, it's like 24 or 25 records that you've. I know you, and not to mention all the records you appear on, but as a leader, do you have that many
gosh, do I
records?
have that many?
It's a
I don't
lot.
think that's that much, but I've
It's a lot.
wow. Okay. Well, I have to count, but I feel like it's a lot, not quite that much. But
Well,
yeah, you know, I try to put out a record every year or so, or a couple years, and well, I guess I'm getting up there, so maybe that
that's
would
what
count.
happens when you're 54, man.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what are if someone new to your stuff? I mean, I definitely recommend American Ballad, and I think we you know we talked about the duet you did with Brad. That would be a cool one.
Hmm.
What are some other records that you're real proud of? If you were saying, you know, you were kind of listing some of the records you have out there that you particularly like or would.
Yeah, one that came out not too long ago that I really like a lot is a duo project I did with Lionel Loueke,
Yeah,
the wonderful guitarist.
yeah.
You know, has been playing with Herbie Hancock and Dave Holland for years, and so that's one that originally came out on vinyl exclusively on a label called Nouvelle, um, and then it was released digitally. A company in England, in London, picked it up, um, and gosh, and I'm spacing on the name of the label now. But anyway, that's available online. You know.
Yeah, that's a really cool record. And you did one in 2021 with, did you do a trio? I'm looking this up here, but
Yes, the latest trio record is with Ben Street and Billy
right.
Hart.
Yes.
And yeah,
Beautiful
we just
record, man.
thank you. Yeah, we actually just came back from a tour in Europe. I mean, can you imagine 82 years old? This guy's still
Yeah.
hoofing it, you know,
Amazing.
and playing just beautifully, you
Yeah.
know. And so I'm trying to get into the studio with them in January to make a follow up. We've got some new music.
Oh,
So
that'll be
yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
Well, I've got a couple of interesting questions. I think they're interesting. I hope you find them interesting. You've played with a pretty amazing list of people. I mean, I'm just going to throw some names out there: Ron Carter, Jack DeJohnette, Joe Henderson, Steve Gadd, Joshua Redman, Al Foster, James Taylor, John Scofield. Did you play with Rollins? Did you play with Sonny Rollins?
I did, yeah.
Wow. Can you
I
tell
spent
us
about
about
a
that?
yeah, I spent about a year and a half with Sonny,
Mm,
in the 90s,
wow.
mid 90s. Yeah, that was thrilling. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the new biography? Just it's actually sitting over here on my shelf.
Is it out?
And man, I got that in the mail yesterday. I opened it. I've been eager. At 772 pages.
Yeah, you know, we were rehearsing, I think I can say this now. So is it officially out?
It's out.
It's
Yeah.
published. Okay. I don't know why I had to keep it here anyway, but we were rehearsing with Lovano, who I think did the foreword to that book, and he was telling us all about it. You know, like, you're not gonna believe it. It's every detail.
Yeah.
You know, at 700 pages, I guess. You know, but just, you know, he was saying, he's like, you know, he's doing his exercise routine and he's listening to the records of the period that he's reading the book. You know, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
forth. So anyway. It
What do you
sounds like
remember
an
about playing
incredible
with
book.
him? What was that like playing with him? And what are some
Um,
maybe the poignant
yeah.
memories?
Um, I tend to describe it just in terms of the experience being around him, and certainly on the bandstand. The 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 way I think about it, or thought about it at the time, is like I've never played with anybody who leans in so much to the music,
Yeah.
like he is all in,
Yeah.
and of course this by listening to his records and just knowing this guy, of course, but anyway, it was incredible. I mean, the ideas, his spirit,
Yeah.
I mean, his time and the way he would phrase. I mean, if there's a non-piano player that I feel kind of, especially more recently, as I feel like I've sort of been zeroing in a little bit more on like how I like to play. I feel like it's Sonny, as an influence, as a real example of a true improviser,
Mhm.
and so that was really special for me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Who's someone still playing today, who you've not played with that you'd like to play with? If you got a call today,
Hmm.
an offer to play with someone, who's someone that you would say, "Oh, hell yeah, I'd like to play with that person."
Wow. Um, that's a good question. I mean, he's not really playing, I think, now, but Wayne was always like, oh man, I would love to just play a few notes with that guy, Wayne Shorter. But I think he's fairly retired in terms of the horn at this point. But um, yeah, he was a big one. I mean, there's some guys like there's some drummers that I would still love to play with. I've been very blessed to play with so many great drummers, and
Mhm.
but like someone I was talking to, Ben Street, who plays a lot with Tootie Heath. And it's interesting because I was living out in Santa Fe, New Mexico myself for a few years there, but I missed him.
Mm.
And but he's a bit of a yet, I'd love to play with Tootie.
Right on.
It's a great feel, um and then of course there's a host of young guys, I'd love to play with.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Blake. Have you played with him?
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Over the years, I did one of his records, and we've done gigs, over the years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, so here's the really interesting part two of that question. It's one of those kind of just mind game things, those
Hmm.
what ifs. You can bring anyone back from the past. I mean, Miles, anybody, Monk, anyone that to play with for a few hours. Just a little pretend game. Who would you pick?
Yeah, well, you kind of said the guy. I mean, I think Miles would be
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be.
I think it was Goldings when I talked to him said, I think it was him who said Miles, and he said, yeah, but he'd probably fire me. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. You have a Grammy. That's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, that was, well, it was this collective. I mean, it's Steve Gadd's band that
yeah,
we won that together, with that project. So I do own one of those things
yeah. You're being modest. I
on
mean,
the
you
shelf.
you have the only vocal track on the record, and yeah, you that's pretty cool.
That was an honor, yeah.
What do you think it is? This is maybe a weird question, but what do you think it is about you that you've had such a great career and played with so many people? I mean, the easy answer is, well, you're good. Okay, but let's see if there's something more that comes to mind. What is it about you that makes you in demand, that makes people want to play with you?
Wow, well, thanks for that. I self-analysis here. Y- you know, uh I mean, I think we talked about sort of the drum thing. I've always loved rhythm. I feel very compelled with rhythm, and I think in terms of, I think it's one of my stronger suits.
Mhm.
Um uh feeling time, and you know um so maybe, oh wow, there's just say there's a bald eagle that just flew by, is right up in this
Wow.
tree. I
No
really
kidding.
you should see this, but
Wish I could.
I live on the Delaware River, and there's a bald eagle in this tree. So that's a very good sign.
Do you
I don't
see them
know.
very often there?
Yeah, but not this close. This is,
Wow.
I don't think I can turn my computer safely, but maybe I need to take a quick snapshot.
Take a picture and
Let
send
me
it,
see if I can.
and I'll add it to the I'll
Okay,
add it
hold
to the
on.
video. I'll edit the video and put it in there.
They're majestic
Yeah.
creatures. I
Yeah,
mean, unbelievable.
send me
Oh,
that
there he
picture and
goes. Wow.
send me that picture, and I'm gonna edit it into the video. That's
Yeah,
cool, man.
this town is kind of known. So I live in a little town called Narrowsburg, New York, and there's all these eagles, and it's an amazing
Wow.
place. Yeah. Anyway, what was the question?
I don't remember. Let's
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's do some rapid fire.
Oh, you were asking about why people are hiring me.
Yeah. What is it about you other than the fact that you're good
I
and
mean,
you
again, so maybe rhythm, harmony,
yeah,
melody.
yeah, yeah,
These are things that I love, and I am incredibly blessed, to be able to play with, some of my favorite musicians in the world, and
yeah,
you know, some have passed or are at the end of their careers, and some are, in some points just beginning or in their middle or whatever. But it's
yeah.
been a real blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, right on, man. And I'm sure probably part of that equation is that you're a good guy and people like hanging out with you because if
Well, I hope so.
unless you're I mean, even if you're amazingly good, if people don't like hanging out with you, they don't want to play with you. So, that probably says something too. Well, do you mind some kind of rapid fire questions?
Sure.
And the idea is short answer, but if you want to give a long answer, that's fine. And some of these are impossible, but just see what comes to mind. Most memorable show you've ever played?
There was a Sonny Rollins show in Istanbul, Turkey, um, in this incredible amphitheater, and the memorable thing about it, not only was it, I think, a really good gig, but there were a couple elements. One was that Sonny was that you would hear when we were like in the hotel and just around town, you would hear the speakers going off for the call to prayer, and there was this, like, I don't know what the instrument would be, but some sort of double reeded instrument that was, had that kind of nasal quality and these incredible melodies, odd scales, or at least that we weren't typically used to. I swear that he was responding to them from the stage, and he was playing them, and but then the other thing that was quite memorable was there was a power failure. This was an outdoor summer gig in this amphitheater, and power went out. Bob Cranshaw's playing electric bass, so there's no bass. There's drums, and there's piano, and everybody else who was playing acoustically, including Sonny. And he just kept playing.
Mm.
But I'm talking about, like, the lights were out. It was just pitch black, right? And he's still playing. And then, then dramatically the lights came back up, and people just went nuts,
Yeah.
and so that was a memorable gig, and more recently, a solo concert that I played in Sao Paulo, Brazil, in this beautiful hall. I mean, it was just recent, but I mean, I feel like that was, and it was really sort of, I'm doing some more solo playing, and to be is really my first time in a proper, concert hall. Like, wow, this is really beautiful, and so just that was really amazing. In Brazil, the Brazilians, I mean, the music is like religion there, and it's just so soulful, and so that was a really special for me. That was sort of like many years ago and very recently,
Right
just,
on. Yeah, that's
yeah.
beautiful. Memorable show that you attended?
Mm. going back to Miles, I think seeing Miles finally, and really like maybe one of two times, was, at the North Sea Jazz Festival. Just being able to see that guy live and to hear him, and he sounded incredible. With
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Let's do the deserted island cliche question. One record. You only get one record to listen to. What comes to mind?
Jazz record.
Any record. But you have to listen. It's the only record you can listen to for, I don't know, let's say for a year. It's the only thing you can listen to.
Till you're rescued.
Yeah.
What if the record's so good, just leave me here? What just popped into my head because it was so meaningful to me. I mean, it's an impossible question, but
yeah, sure.
But because it was so meaningful to me and hit me so deeply, I would say Wayne Shorter's Juju.
Okay.
There's something about that record that's deeply, I don't know, desert island material.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What pisses you off, Kevin?
Oh, gosh. Well, that's a hell of a question. What pisses me off? Man. Whew. Oh, wow. I'd have to think about that one. I think I'm not saying this is a healthy pissing me off, but I tend to be kind of hard on myself, actually. So what I'm working on is trying to not to be so pissed off at myself. However, maybe there's times where I'm like, yeah, come on, man.
Yeah.
If but in all seriousness, yeah, if that's not too if that doesn't sound too weird, or narcissistic, I mean, of course, you can go down the rabbit hole of the political situation now, and I wouldn't say that. I mean, unfairness pisses me off, and even towards nature. I mean, which of course we're a part of. So we're really just robbing ourselves. What we're doing to the planet is pissing me off for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know that phrase. It's the challenge is what action to take here.
And that's
in
the
these
follow-up
situations.
question. That's
because
what do you do?
Because sometimes I hear that term being pissed off, and I feel like it has no door at the end of that hallway. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, well, I'm just going to gripe about this, But anyway, I mean, look, it's obviously, I mean, when you think about the climate and our very survival and the way people are treating each other with obviously the war and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think that's more sort of pain than pissed. Although it can take the form of anger, and it probably needs to, in order to get some movement. But I don't have the answers there, except for just trying to be kind in my own life, to do my work, just to spread beauty, to speak my mind if I feel it's needed to be spoken. Here's the eagle again.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. I don't know if she's hunting or, wow. Anyway.
do you have any spiritual or philosophical practices that help you deal with some of the difficulties of life?
Yeah. I have a meditation, something of a meditation practice. I have a yoga practice that I've been doing for many years. The thing about whether it's external or internal. I mean, I feel that a lot of my battles, if you will, tend to be internal. Like how to, and maybe it's this way for most people. It's like, how do we, are we how do we treat ourselves? You know, how do when we fall short of what our goals are? How do or even including I'm not doing enough, for these causes that I say I care so much about,
Mhm.
or that are so painful. So, or just general like insecurity, things that,
Mhm.
you know, neurotic uh thinking patterns, and looping or going down rabbit holes in social media, the scroll kind of a thing. How do I take myself sort of back from that,
Right.
but then you know um realize that the life is hard, particularly now with these complicated matters that the world is facing.
Yeah, it's a strange time for sure. Do you have
Yeah.
a particular tradition that you meditate in, a particular style, or is it more of a self-style thing? What
I
do you
think
do?
it's sort of at this point it's sort of self-styled. I do some
Hmm.
breathing exercises, you might say, or practices.
Yeah.
Um, it generally it's almost like a yogic breathing, but it's something that I've just sort of developed
Yeah.
myself after a while. And also I do what a saxophone player might call long tones as part of that practice, where I'm making a sound and trying to get um, my body vibrating with that
Mm, mm,
resonance. So
mm,
I find that that's very calming and grounding. And that's just something that's evolved over the last several years.
mm,
Just like how to calm the nervous system with all the stimuli,
hmm.
external and internal. How to quiet the mind and this kind of
Yeah.
a thing.
Yeah. Right on. That's reminiscent of I forget what they call that thing that the Tibetan monks do.
Yeah, the Tuvan singing, the Tuvans, like the harmonic singing,
Yeah.
it's actually I do some of that as well. A friend of mine, a really great singer-songwriter by the name of Timothy Hill. In fact, he's on, I think, yeah, I know that he sang on Brad's last record, doing some low tones
Mm,
on, I think it was Gabriel, Finding Gabriel. I think Brad's one of his more recent records.
mm,
Um, and so anyway, Timothy does this harmonic singing, and he showed me a little bit of it. Where you can get two or three tones going at the same time,
mhm,
the
mhm.
fundamental, and then all these. You can go through the harmonic series.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I'll do some of that to try to hit hit the chakras of some sort.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, man, I want to respect your time. I've got three more intended to be short answers
Okay. I hope
for
it's not
you.
getting too
Question.
dark here. We're at evening time here.
No, it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Uh, what's something that might surprise people about you?
Hmm.
And and that can be sort of whatever you want. If someone kind of tangentially knows you and then they got to know you a little bit better and
Yeah.
said, "Oh man, that surprised me about you. You do that, or you like that, or you
Hmm.
guilty pleasure maybe, or just a kind of music you like that they weren't aware of, or whatever
Hmm.
comes to mind."
Hmm. Um, I, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's some of the things maybe that I mentioned before. I mean, I can't figure out if I'm an introvert or an extrovert. I think I'm probably an introvert, but I also, I think that just, come forward with a little bit. I think that I can easily present just as a person. I mean, this isn't maybe necessarily talking about music, but when I'm in my musician circles, I can joke around. I can be kind of funny sometimes. I think maybe people are laughing. I used to be able, I mean, I can still do sort of like impressions and this kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, but and I don't know whether it's. I mean, I I'm no Larry Goldings, you know, when it
Yeah,
comes to, you know,
yeah,
the comedy
yeah,
scene, but the
yeah,
jazz comedy scene. But, you know, and I think and maybe it's not a big wouldn't be a big surprise if maybe people can pick it up in the music, but um you know, I have you know, at times really sort of struggled with feeling a feeling of or almost like depression, you know, like a sadness, and you know, there were certain things that maybe led to some of these, you know, this kind of worldview, and I've really had to work on that, you know,
yeah,
because I think it's easy to present a face like, oh, everything's cool and we're just joking around, but you know, it's we're human beings, and we're complex, and I'm not saying that's all there is there for me, but it's been something that I've had to grapple with,
yeah,
and you know, I think it maybe it comes through in the music, some of the, you know, ways that I, you know, make music, but I hope there's joy, you know, that's coming
yeah,
across
yeah,
too
yeah,
with all
absolutely,
this, you know. But
absolutely.
so that, I don't know, maybe that would surprise people if they, oh man, I wouldn't know. But that's kind of what you get sometimes
Sure. Yeah,
with
it's a
you
human
know,
condition, man.
it is, you know, and
We
we tend to want to hide that stuff. You know, we often live in a culture. It's like, oh well, don't be sad, you know, like you know, or you have, you know, and sometimes you can feel guilty because you think, well, man, I have so much going for me.
Yeah,
What's wrong, you know?
right, right.
And
Yeah,
that can be a you know, snatch yourself up kind of moment to be like, hey man, like remember, you know, like you incredibly abundant, beautiful, you know, creative life, and you
yeah,
know, but we, as you say, we're still human, and I think it's important to note these things, because sometimes it, you know, there's other people out there kind of suffering, and there
right.
definitely are, you know, and I think it can be helpful
You
to say,
bet.
well, you're not alone there, you know.
Amen. Amen,
Yeah,
brother. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Uh, so what do you think happens when we die?
Oh man, deep questions, Sean. Um, you know, I've thought about it. I mean, I would not be surprised in the least if when we die, it's basically as reported from people who have died and have had near death experiences, where there's a whole other reality. And it makes sense. I mean, you know, if you, I mean, if I don't know a whole lot about physics, but I understand that energy cannot be destroyed. You know, I think, what do they say? Don't they say it can't be created or destroyed? It's like it just is there.
Hmm.
It's going to be transformed.
Hmm.
So, in terms of consciousness, I have no idea. But you know, if you, as I did last night, step outside on a clear night and you see that moon and these stars, and now like all these images that are coming from the Webb telescope and these, you know, star nurseries. I mean, it's astounding. And the so yeah, I would not be surprised. I would be surprised if it was just like dunk
Yeah.
over, you
Yeah.
know.
Of course, you
You
wouldn't be
know,
surprised then
I would
because you
not
would be
be
aware.
surprised. I would not
Yeah.
be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
All right, man. Last question. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
yeah,
What
yeah.
last question, when you are dead and gone, what do you hope people say about you?
Um, that that this microphone I set up is not distorting the way it is in my headphones.
It's not.
Oh, good, because it's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
is lighting up red. I don't know how to adjust it. So, no, I mean, I hope that they say he was a kind person, a loving person, um, and somebody who was generous with his gifts. You know,
Amen, man.
yeah.
And I find myself saying this a lot with that last question, but I mean it sincerely. I think people will be saying that about you because they're probably already saying it about you. You're a very generous guy. You've been generous with your time today. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm honored that you took this time. And I thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to that you would have asked, and it's really great to talk to you, John.
And I hope to see you down the road sometime in person.
Absolutely.
All right, take care, man.
Where do you live again?
I'm in College Station, Texas. I
Wow.
retired recently. I was a professor here for many years at Texas A&M University.
Uh-huh.
But you know, I just got back from New York. I've been up there twice in the last few months just to see
Mm.
jazz. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping our paths will cross sometime.
Me too.
Right on, man. Take care.
Thanks, John.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye-bye.